Hello you beautiful misfits, my name is Matt and you're watching the Pixel Burn E3 Blitzkrieg 2015, and in this video I'll be chewing my way through the Sony conference, which opened, as all these bloody things do, with a montage of various PS4 games, some of which we'd be seeing later on, which does rather spoil the surprise somewhat. Wait a minute, is this song saying "Here we fucking go"? It does sound like it, doesn't it? Hold on, let me check the lyrics. It is! My word, swearing at a big corporate event?
As far as stupid gimmicks goes, Irish is the best fucking one.
Sean Layden, president and CEO of Sony Computer Entertainment America, then took to the stage to, well, pat himself on the back really, delivering some spiel about PS4 being the best place to play games, while simultaneously trying to cram as many uses of the words games, gamers or gaming into his speech as he was physically able.
Games, and gamers. Games, gaming, game development, gaming, full stop.
When he wasn't instructing the audience to clap on command.
That's a clap line. That's an applause line.
No, Sean, that's for us to decide. And generally preaching the gospel of PlayStation like an old-time evangelical preacher. In fact, the only thing missing from his opening speech was a rousing hallelujah! He left that to the audience, hitting them with The Last Guardian on PS4 straight out of the gate, which really doesn't look all that different from its debut as a PS3 exclusive, way back in the murky mists of time, although I suppose that could be considered a testament to the game's art design. Anyway, you all know the score. Boy shouts gibberish at Fluffy Griffin Dog Thing to solve puzzles, Fluffy Griffin Dog Thing catches Boy when he falls, and both generally get into all manner of scrapes. It then ends with a fade to black and the promise of a 2016 release date. Yeah, I'll believe that when I see it. After that initial pandering to nostalgia, it was time for something new in the form of Horizon Zero Dawn by Killzone creators Guerrilla Games, a post-apocalyptic scenario where nature has reclaimed the earth and humanity has been reduced to various wandering tribes, once more living in harmony with the natural world. People wear simple, handmade natural clothing, wield primitive weapons and take only what they need from robot deer with giant tanks of green liquid on their backs. Yep, the big twist in Horizon is that humanity has made way for various breeds of robot creatures like these giant giraffe looking types, which seem to be doing a better job living in harmony with nature than we ever have. They're also giant robot dinosaurs with missile launchers, of course, because why the hell not? Giant robot dinosaurs with missile launchers that incidentally you get to take down with rope arrows and other gadgets, kinda like a post-apocalyptic Ygritte from Game of Thrones, fighting an Imperial Scout Walker from Return of the Jedi. All in all, one of the more intriguing games I've seen in all E3, but it's a PS4 exclusive so I'll probably never get to play it. We then got the world exclusive debut of the trailer for a new Hitman game, which was very stylish but showed bugger all in the way of gameplay. It's just called Hitman now, with no subtitle like Silent Assassin or Blood Money, and will be coming out on PC as well as PS4. It's also coming out on Xbox One, but then they're not exactly going to mention that at a Sony conference, are they? And before I could catch my figurative breath, we were shown some random snippets of Street Fighter V, which is definitely not coming to Xbox One in the foreseeable future. You can thank an exclusivity deal between Sony and Capcom for that one. There's not even all that much to say about it really, except the background stage doesn't have half the things in it it's meant to have. In the trailer there's a traditional British pub with that most traditional of British pub names, London, along with Union Jack flags dotted all over the place and the ubiquitous red telephone box, which are actually something of an endangered species in the UK nowadays. The game itself, however, also crams in a punk band, men in bowler hats, and the Queen's Royal Guard with trombones and trumpets playing their stoic little hearts out. Aside from all that, well, it's Street Fighter, innit? You punch and kick people in the face until they fall over. Enough said. Sean Murray of Guildford-based Hello Games then came out on stage to show off what he claimed was a mere 3 minutes of No Man's Sky, yet felt a lot longer than that. In a good way that is, and not in an EA style, oh god my arse has fallen into a coma sort of way. In a demonstration that beat you over the head with the game's sandbox elements, Sean started by showing us some impromptu space combat before switching to a humongous star map of the in-game galaxy players will be exploring. According to Sean, each point of light is a star, and each star is orbited by
planet-sized planets,
which is about as descriptive as saying each planet's circumference is as long as a piece of string. What he means, according to this Game Informer article from last year, is that No Man's Sky has planets the size of one you might find in our own solar system. Yeah, that doesn't really narrow it down much, does it? But enough astronomical nitpicking. After randomly selecting one of these million points of light, Sean then hyper-warpamagizes there in his ship and touches down to explore. While tromping around, he blows up a rock to show off the game's destructible terrain elements, then gets attacked by a giant robot sentinel whose job it is to stop people blowing up rocks. A release date is still to be announced, although Hello Games promise it'll be soon. How long that is exactly is, well, it's like the size of a planet-sized planet. Vague and indeterminate. After that we got a huge dose of surrealness courtesy of Media Molecule and their new game called, simply enough, Dreams, which is about dreams. Like Little Big Planet, Dreams is all about encouraging user-generated content, only instead of making little levels for Sackboy to navigate, you're creating your own Dreamiverse for people to explore. All by using a controller to directly paint things on screen, like this old man for example. We then got to see the gameplay trailer, which starts with a bloke playing a piano in a moonlit field, before shifting to two polar bears playing in the snow. Then there's a hoverbike chase through a cyberpunk city, before a quick cut to zombies rising from the earth, subsequently dispatched by a teddy bear wielding a sledgehammer. We then fade back to the man playing his piano in a field, only now he's a polar bear with a hoverbike, because dreams are weird, I guess. While Dreams certainly looks interesting to say the least, colour me a tad sceptical of Media Molecule's claims the game has no pre-made assets and is as easy to use as they say. While I don't doubt some players will master it to the point where they're making stuff like that shown in the trailer, I expect the majority of players' Dreamiverses will be a nightmarish hellscape of badly drawn cocks. I guess it's one of those games you have to actually play yourself to really grasp the concept of it. A good test of it will be if I can make a dream in which you're trapped on a roller coaster being driven through outer space by a laughing circus ringmaster who tells you that you can get off the ride anytime you like. Yep, that's an actual dream I once had. Up next was Firewatch from Campo Santo, a studio formed by people whose previous credits include The Walking Dead and Mark of the Ninja. You play a chap called Henry who has left the world behind to work as a fire lookout in middle of nowhere Wyoming. Henry's job is to sit on top of a mountain looking for smoke and generally keeping the wilderness safe and secure. Until one day a strange mystery draws Henry away from his lookout tower and out into the world. Initial impressions suggest some open world survival and exploration elements crossed with Walking Dead style narrative and interpersonal choices, centred around a dark mystery storyline that belies the game's otherwise cheery, pleasant looking visuals. Plus you can also throw bottles at kids.
Hey, you kids!
Game of the year. We then came to the point of the conference where my interest took a swan dive, and not because of sweary man of the people Adam Boyes here.
This shit just never gets old.
I have a feeling it's about to. Specifically a swan dive into an empty swimming pool full of broken bricks, because as much as I like Adam Boyes, not even he could make me excited for the Taken King expansion for Destiny. The trailer for which was, as you would expect, a wad of pseudo-mythic bollocks about
Oryx, the Taken King,
who is
building a dark army to hunt you down.
like every forgettable 2-bit sci-fi fantasy villain. God, this game takes itself way more seriously than it ever deserves to be. It'll have PS4 exclusive missions in it, by the way, if you hadn't already guessed as much. Don't be fooled by Adam's supposed excitement for it here either. You can see in his eyes that all too familiar dead-eyed despair of a Destiny player. Then there was a trailer for Assassin's Creed Syndicate, which we already know about, hyping up Evie Fry as a playable character. Don't let that fool you, by the way. According to numerous reports, she has only a comparative handful of playable missions compared to her brother, who is still very much the star of the game. She does kick serious ass though. Then came the trailer for World of Final Fantasy, or Final Fantasy Chibi Edition as I'm going to call it from now on. Supposedly a brand new Final Fantasy game set in a whole new world, it nevertheless features shitloads of characters from other Final Fantasy games, albeit in tiny super deformed style, which was little more than a glorified segue to this spiffy CGI trailer for a remake of Final Fantasy VII. Something Final Fantasy fans have been begging for ever since the PS2 launched, and which Square Enix said they'd only ever do if they made a new Final Fantasy game that surpassed the original Final Fantasy VII. That hasn't happened, of course. Final Fantasy VII remains one of, if not the, best game in the series, matched only by Final Fantasy VI. What has happened is Square Enix needs money. And this remake is an outright license to print the stuff, assuming the demand for a Final Fantasy VII remake is genuine, that is, and not just a vocal minority playing "wouldn't it be great if." The crowd at the conference went mad for it though, so who knows, maybe this will pull Square Enix out of that big dark Final Fantasy XIII shaped hole they've been languishing in. After that was a brief segment covering some new indie games from Devolver Digital, like Ronin, which dubs itself a turn-based action platformer. No, I don't get what that means either, but it looks a bit like Mark of the Ninja, and I loved Mark of the Ninja. Then Aether, an isometric action RPG that reminds me of a hypothetical fusion of the first Diablo and Dark Souls. Also Mother Russia Bleeds, a Soviet Streets of Rage with ludicrous jibs that has since courted some unnecessary controversy from the usual sources. And finally Crossing Souls, which is, fucked if I know, Earthbound married to a late 1980s kids cartoon. All at least look interesting however, which is more than I can say for that Destiny expansion. And then came the biggest gaming news in over 14 years for fans of Shenmue. A game I never played because I never owned a Sega Dreamcast. Like a lot of people didn't. With the announcement of Shenmue III, or rather the Kickstarter campaign for Shenmue III, which Sony graciously allowed to have a spot on their conference but had absolutely no financial involvement with it whatsoever, no siree. Yeah, of course that's bollocks. Sony are helping out with the development and the Kickstarter is only there to gauge the level of interest, which turned out to be over $6 million worth. Shenmue, for those who don't know, was one of those cult classics that some gamers talk about in hushed reverent whispers. Released in 1999 and said to have cost Sega $70 million to develop, it was an insanely ambitious open world sandbox game packed full of tiny details. The kind that are 10 a penny nowadays, but back then were downright mind blowing. It also gave the world QuickTime events. Yeah, thanks Shenmue. But as I said earlier, I've never played it, so all I know personally about Shenmue is that it's about a guy called Ryo who's looking for some big burly sailors.
Do you know of a place where sailors hang out? I'm trying to locate some sailors. Do you know any places where sailors hang out around here? Nozomi.
Ryo.
You got a minute? Nozomi. Do you know of any shops where sailors might go? Do you know any places where sailors like to hang out around here?
You say sailors, but you don't mean just any sailor, do you?
Right.
When he's not taking on 70 men at once. Still, the announcement of a possible Shenmue 3 pleased a lot of people. Like this emotionally overwhelmed chap for example. After that was a trailer for Batman Arkham Knight, which isn't important anymore because the game has already been available to buy for weeks now, except the PC version, withdrawn from sale shortly after release for the highly technical reason of being fucking broken. Lord Andrew of House then came on stage, taking a break from training Sansa Stark in the ways of the Sith to talk about Project Morpheus, along with some guff about Spotify and PlayStation View, Sony's TV gubbins which supposedly lets you purchase individual cable channels separately from a multi-channel bundle, and other stuff that only Americans have to worry about. After that was the exclusive debut for Call of Duty Black Ops 3, presented by the sinisterly named Mark Lamia.
Hello, PlayStation Nation!
This was really the only part of the conference that completely bored me to tears, because it's COD only you're fighting robots now. Well, drones anyway, and you still fight ordinary people too, while jumping around with magic rocket boots or something like in Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. That and all the other futuristic stuff kind of reminded me of those Middle East bits in the recent RoboCop reboot. I mean really, can we even call COD a modern military shooter anymore? Everything's so sci-fi futuristic in it now, they might as well just have it all take place on the bloody moon. After that came a spiel about Disney Infinity 3.0 with Star Wars stuff in it, serving as little more than a segue to some more Star Wars Battlefront stuff, which looked pretty much like the bit we saw in EA's conference, with the Empire and Rebels shooting each other, only with less snow and more sand, because it was on Tatooine this time. Beats me why anybody would be fighting there at all, because if there's a bright centre to the universe, then Tatooine's the planet that it's farthest from. Formally closing the event was Uncharted 4: A Thief's End, the fourth adventure of strutting Scourge of the Third World Nathan Drake, seen here emerging into a market square full of foreign types that he doesn't immediately shoot at, or do much of anything at all for that matter. Riveting stuff. And with that the conference was over. Nah, not really. The interactive cutscene for Uncharted 4 was restarted on account of technical difficulties, and when they finally got it working properly, It showed off all the usual climbing, wisecracks, driving, punching, shooting, and other things Nathan Drake does when he's not destroying local economies. Then the conference was genuinely over, whereupon its bleary-eyed attendees all shambled out of the hall under the merciless glare of the lights. Despite the genuinely new and interesting games on show like Horizon Zero Dawn, Dreams, all the Devolver Digital games and Firewatch, the overall impression I felt most strongly after this conference ended was one of familiarity. And as we all know, familiarity can often breed contempt. Contempt is perhaps too strong a word, yet I still found it difficult to get excited for another Hitman reboot, another Assassin's Creed game, another Street Fighter installment, a fourth Uncharted game, or more Call of Duty. For every brand new game on display, I had to sit through several things that, while not completely insufferable, didn't exactly set my world on fire. It was a bit like watching season 2 of Twin Peaks, in that there were some really interesting and exciting new developments going on, but they were all sandwiched between layers of James Hurley riding around on his bike being dull. The other element of this conference that irked me somewhat was the pandering to nostalgia, established from the outset with The Last Guardian and followed up by a double whammy of Final Fantasy VII and Shenmue III.
You say sailors.
All in all, this was, like last year's Sony conference, a complacent affair. Not terrible by any stretch, and certainly more tolerable than EA Sports and Pele Parade. It just felt a bit too pandering and self-indulgent for my tastes. So with that done, it's on to the home stretch of the Ubisoft and Square Enix presentations, which I should hopefully have done for you sooner than this one. But you'll have to wait for those, of course, because I am nothing if not slow and inconsistent. That, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around this.